On today's show, we discuss the recent Disney earnings call, and then we're going to play a little bit of what we would do to improve each of the 4 theme parks. That's today on Traveling with the Mouse. Welcome, everyone, to episode number 415. I am your host for this week. My name is John, and I am joined by Adam.
Cool. What's up, everybody?
We do not have Jason this week. He had business to attend to, so he wasn't going to quite make it. We actually had tried to do a recording a little earlier in the week, but I couldn't make it that time. I actually was not feeling very well. We're just having to make do the best we can this week.
So, yes, we will hear the Disneyland trip soon, but...
Yes, because he did just...
Stay tuned.
Yeah. It's still going to be to come. We're not going to forget the trip report on it by any means. So, yeah.
Indeed.
So, why don't we talk about how Disney Parks and Resorts reports a 13% increase and $8.3 billion in revenue for the third quarter?
Yeah.
That sounds surprising when you first read that. And then you break the report down and see what has taken place. Of course, Iger, we already know he knows how to deliver things. Something that was lacking in the...
he has a better delivery, that's for sure.
He knows how to deliver things, whether they're truthful or not.
Yeah.
Let's see. How do we break this down? Segment operating income increased by 11% to $2.4 billion. Higher operating results for the quarter reflected increases at Disney's international parks and resorts, which were partially offset by lower resorts at domestic operations, and to a lesser extent, the merchandise licensing business. So higher operating resorts at international parks. Basically, Shanghai, Hong Kong were actually open.
Yeah.
Part of the reason, right?
Helps make money when you're open.
Yeah, because wasn't the previous quarter they weren't open but like just a few days or something? One of them, which one was it? Shanghai was only open like a few days?
Maybe. I feel like Hong Kong had closed too at some point. But anyway.
Yeah, they all had that. But I mean, they all showed good results, partially due, I'm sure, to pent-up demand.
Yep.
There was an increase apparently at the cruise line as well. So.
Oh, yeah. I heard they were averaging like 98% occupancy on the ships, which is...
Makes sense because it had been a longer period of time that people were unable to be on them.
They're still riding the wave, if you will, of the pent-up demand.
You got to remember this, too, when they did come back, but they came back with a lot of restrictions, and that was also a deterrent. And now they're pretty much unrestricted again. Right. I'm sure that made a big difference in people wanting to go.
Yeah.
So
as COVID's on the rise again, as they say, a new variant. But
doesn't that always happen like every July, August or whatever? It's always the funny thing is when all this started, they were like, oh, the winter is going to be the worst part. And it seems like every time it's always the summer. Every year.
The last few years, July was bad,
Both times I've had it was the first week of August.
Really?
Both times. Both times that I knew I had it at least. But, yeah.
Right. The only time I had it was right after I came back from Disney in November. But anyway, in November though. But
But you were in a warm climate.
Yeah.
Apparently, there was some story I saw that there was a breakout in some part of Florida of leprosy. Have you seen that?
Well, I mean, it is Florida, so nothing surprises me.
I can't remember exactly where. It was somewhere in Central Florida. I mean, I don't know what's considered to be a breakout. I don't know how many cases they have had, but
I mean, one would be a breakout of leprosy, I would think. But wow.
Well, the disease does still exist on the skin of armadillos, but I don't know how many people would be just out there like touching armadillo.
Well, I mean, it's Florida,
right?
You never know.
People are out there stroking armadillos.
Possibly.
Hey, my finger came off.
Yeah. Stranger things have actually happened in Florida, believe it or not. So, Florida man has leprosy. Doesn't surprise me. Not at all.
So, the Disney stock had closed the day at a pretty low, about where it's been for a little bit now, 87.49 at that point in time.
Damn.
I want to say I saw that it had a jump today. I honestly don't know why. I'm trying to figure out what came about in this call that made people feel as though there's a turning point coming. Maybe they feel like it can't get any. Maybe they feel like it can't get any worse. Maybe,
or maybe,
hey, now's the time to
yeah,
buy because it can't get any worse. Is the lowest going to get?
right. Maybe people are buying it because it's low again, and they're like, when Apple buys them, it'll go way up.
Well, maybe that's another thing. Maybe Iger's comments regarding that because he didn't.
Yeah.
The fact that it keeps gaining
some momentum.
In the
news. So yeah, last November he was asked about it. I think was it November? Whenever there was a point, I guess, whenever he took over, that it was talked about, and he said that's rumor or speculation. Don't buy into whatever.
Yeah.
This time, he was more cagey about it and was just like, I think one excuse he gave was something about how, like, the government probably wouldn't allow such an acquisition because it would definitely create a monopoly, which I think they, Apple, you could argue, already has one somewhat, but maybe not. But it would be a huge merger, so there'd be some scrutiny over it probably. That was one thing he said. But otherwise he didn't really deny it or anything,
Well, this was the comment. It says, "I'm not going to speculate about the potential for Disney to be acquired by any company, whether it's a technology company or not. Obviously, anyone who wants to speculate about such things would have to immediately consider the global regulatory environment.
Right.
I'll say no more than that. It's not something we obsess about."
Right. So, yeah, that's not a denial.
It's not necessarily a no, but
I think it's what it tells me is they're trying to figure out a pathway to get to that without having some regulatory restrictions on it.
I think that if something like this does happen, it wouldn't so much be a true buyout as it would probably end up being a merger of equals, so to speak, with somebody.
Perhaps.
If that were to ever happen. And it's the main reason there being to increase capital if they were to do such a thing, because it would have to benefit Disney for sure.
Yeah, some people would say they would split them off, and I think Apple's main interest would probably not be the parks. It would be the studio and the library of content that Disney has. So imagine Apple Plus and Disney Plus merging to be Dapple Plus Plus. That could be a huge contender for Netflix for one.
Right.
And then they could break off the parks into its own entity perhaps and invest more money into it. That would be the dream for us, park fans, would be pumping money into the theme parks versus what they're doing now, which is all the profits from the theme parks are going to supplement the losses the studio has. At least that's what, again, I don't know if that's actually the case, but you would think the profits are not coming from the studio right now, that's for sure.
Well, once upon a time, let's just say during the Eisner era, for one, obviously we're in two different...
the Renaissance era, you mean?
But I mean two different eras. But basically, during that time period, even though the parks did have a degree of popularity, it was the movie and TV studios that made the money.
Yeah.
And that kind of shifted.
It's the opposite now.
Yeah. You could argue that part of that is because the quality of the stuff that was produced went down. And I don't mean physical quality. I mean quality of the stories. I mean, there's an argument to be made there. Obviously, there's been an issue in resonating with the fan base or the moviegoer or whatever, the general public.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. I feel like they've screwed up the marketing as well, because I don't think they marketed Haunted Mansion, for example, that well. They put a ton of money into Dial of Destiny, and it's barely probably turned a profit at this point, if at all. I don't know how much they spent on marketing, but it was a lot initially to market that film. And
the thing is, like we all kind of made the comments anytime we saw any of the trailers, right?
Yeah.
When we looked at the trailers, the only thing we ever said anything about was the effects. And I think that was probably the general consensus, right? No one was really all that excited about who was playing in it that much. No one was really that excited about the storyline other than it was obvious that the Hatbox Ghost was involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that of course made the fan base.
Sure.
Now, the Haunted Mansion's just been released, so it definitely has an opportunity to turn the corner if more people give it an
It's also competing against Barbie, which is a juggernaut right now, and Oppenheimer to some degree.
Yeah, I cannot figure out the Barbie phenomenon. Truthfully, I don't get it, but
yeah. I mean, also you're releasing a Halloween essentially movie in July.
Well, I mean, according to Disney, that's when Halloween starts.
Yeah,
it starts now.
But I think most people are not really in the mood for a Haunted Mansion or Halloween movie at this point. Film about Halloween, that reminds you of Halloween in July, August. But
when was the original Haunted Mansion released? Do we know?
I'll look that up. While I'm looking that up, though, I did see the movie. Jason and I saw it, which he'll talk about it at some point as well. And maybe we'll do a review. But
yeah, maybe I'll get to see it between now and...
yeah, I won't give anything away, obviously, but I'll just say we really enjoyed it. The movie was actually really good. I thought it's way better than it's getting received right now.
Mm-hmm.
The characters were all very solid. Actually, I think, didn't you say a couple of weeks ago you thought Owen Wilson was not going to be a great addition?
Well, I kind of feel that way when I just see him in it, but
right.
Better than I
surprisingly, he was probably my favorite character, kind of.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. He was kind of the comic relief in a way, I would say. He ended up being the comic relief, but it was like surprisingly really funny, and he did a great job actually in this movie.
Okay.
So the original Haunted Mansion in 2003 was released in November. It says November 26th.
Mm-hmm.
So that's even more confusing. A month after Halloween.
At least during the holiday.
I guess the holiday season, but it still doesn't make sense to me.
They released this one though, they released Haunted Mansion at that marks the beginning of school. On top of that.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean.
Yeah, right. For a lot of places, school just started, yeah. So it's like, the timing, it just doesn't make sense. And, let's put it next to this Barbie movie that probably won't do well. Oh.
Well, I don't know.
What were they thinking?
Well, the question is, who announced what was going to release what first in that case?
Probably. They probably thought, this is a safe time to release this movie. Yeah, and by then, the Hatbox Ghost will be at Haunted Mansion in Disney World.
Maybe that was that was thought that they were going to.
Yeah, we'll have him ready for it since he's a major character in the movie. Spoiler alert, sorry. But
the one thing I don't understand, though, is that they're just going to, speaking of putting him in the Haunted Mansion, there was a rumor that he was going to be in 3 different spots, right?
Yeah.
And they say he's going to be right there by the hallway. And a lot of people think, well, that doesn't make sense and all this other good stuff.
Right. Because Madame Leota is supposed to wake the spirits.
Yeah.
Materialize.
It would ruin the original storyline is kind of the thought there. I think somebody in Imagineering's reasoning is because there's like a painting in that general area of the Hatbox Ghost. I think it's on during the the knockers.
Right. They're right in front of you, and they can open very large doors. Yes, right after the guy who actually, I guess he's not a ghost, he's a zombie, but the guy who's trying to get out of the casket.
Yeah.
Or he's alive, I don't know, whatever. He's not a ghost, technically, anyway. But he's there right before Madame Leota.
Yeah, he's physical somehow.
Yeah, he looks physical.
So maybe he's not really dead. That's why he's saying, let me out of here.
Right, let me out of here. Let me out of here. But not to give any plot away of the movie, but I will say the movie actually addresses this. To me, anyway, after seeing the movie, it makes sense that Hatbox Ghost would be there. I'll just put it that way. So the movie actually addresses that concern. If you're one of those...
So they had this planned from a long time ago is what you're saying.
Maybe. My point is, if you think that he should be after Madame Leota, then go see the movie because it explains that.
I think probably a lot of people feel like he should be in the attic like he is in Disneyland.
Right.
Where
Although to me in Disneyland it's kind of weird because he feels like he's just sort of put there. It doesn't really have like a.
Yeah, was that his original spot?
I thought it was in the attic, but he's kind of like at the exit of the attic, isn't he? At the
Right, he's like
Disneyland?
shows up before you
Right.
jump out the window.
He's just kind of there. Whereas I think they're trying to incorporate him more in the story of the Disney World one. So we'll see.
Speaking of which, why do we go out the window? Like, why would we jump out the window?
Because we're stuck in the attic? I mean, I bet they kind of address that in the movie too, but they don't go out the window. But anyway.
Right. And into the graveyard.
Movie's good, though. It's worth going to see, honestly. I enjoyed it a lot, and it should be doing better than it is at the box office. So either they didn't market it well, or it's just caught up in the whirlwind of Barbie and Oppenheimer, and it's just not good timing, probably either. But this movie was supposed to come out a year ago, right? Back in October of last year or whatever, and then
was it?
I think it was plagued with reshoots and stuff like that too, which they're doing. They apparently did that with Indiana Jones too, right? Didn't it? I remember hearing they were doing tons of reshoots on that.
Yeah.
They spent
plus Harrison Ford got injured.
Right. Yeah. Delayed things. I mean, I don't know. Disney's a hot mess right now.
Yeah, it's
There's no two ways about
not very organized, and it's harder to hide these days when you have issues like that. All because people are just they know everything almost immediately. It's just too much information so fast that's available to the general public.
I guess that's the thing, though. The point that I'm trying to figure out how to make is the content isn't terrible. Like, especially Haunted Mansion, I think is actually quite good. I would say Dial of Destiny is mediocre at best. But didn't you saw Elemental and you said it was really good?
Yes, it is.
But it's not performing.
It's also but it also
well.
it's performing a lot better now. It turned a corner, so to speak. Maybe Haunted Mansion still has a chance.
Hopefully.
Theaters. I remember seeing something that's amassed over something like 400 million now or something.
Okay.
It's like where is it on the list that you saw? You just looked at Indie earlier.
Yeah, I was just looking at
but I think Elemental was above Indie.
And I was just looking at domestic, but we'll see.
Yeah, pull it back up. I'm pretty sure Elemental was above Indie.
Let me look at worldwide this year. Elemental is number 12. Worldwide, yes, 400 million, 425 million.
Okay.
Indiana Jones is actually at number 13 worldwide, 369 million.
So it is above Indie.
So it's definitely going to stay above Indie because Indie's not going to crack 400 million, I don't think. Which would be, I think they said Temple of Doom is the only one that made less, but if you adjust for inflation, then this movie is the lowest by far.
I would say that Elemental will show more strength once it hits Disney Plus, but that brings us to something else.
Yeah, another story.
The direct-to-consumer losses lessen, they say, but the subscriber count actually drops, which seems kind of odd, but while core members rise 1%, so...
Yeah, okay, so, Lord, there's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, that's it. None of that really seems like that all fits together, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, they lost 300,000 subscribers or something. They dipped.
Well, this, according to the earnings call, their direct-to-consumer products, Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN, which I have that bundle, that increased by 9% to $5.5 billion, though their operating loss nearly broke even. There's a lot of things that they say lead to this. I think there are a lot, like Disney, when it first started, there were a lot of people who bought the 3-year thing. Once it expired, the price went up. They actually didn't re-up. I don't know how significant the number was. All I know is I have seen people talk about it since this update took place, like on Twitter and such. And those were the comments they made. So, I don't know how significant the number is, but it could potentially have something to do with it. Like people after that initial buy-in, once it was up, they didn't see it worth renewing, right? And the bundle, like, of course, after mine did, I just went with the bundle because Hulu actually had a good TV option for me. So, and I had Hulu once before.
Right.
So,
I think a lot of people hop from subscription to subscription because now, back when you first cord cutting or cord shaving, depending on what you were doing, from cable, it was like, oh, Netflix, this is great. And then I'll get some kind of streaming TV service for TV. And then now it's like, oh, well, there's Paramount Plus and Hulu and, Netflix and Apple TV and Amazon and Disney Plus and Peacock. There's like a gajillion streaming services now. It's going to cost you way more than cable did 10 years ago. Right.
If you get them all.
So it's like, okay.
Especially with the prices increasing.
Get a trial subscription or a couple of months to watch The Mandalorian, and then they cancel, and then they'll get Netflix to watch something, and then they'll get, Max or Paramount Plus to watch something, and then they'll cancel and move on to, that's what a lot of people do.
I have Max, but the only reason I have Max is included with my
Right, mine too. Yeah, same here. I never watch any of it, though. I barely watch Netflix. I barely watch Max. I barely watch Paramount Plus or whatever the other ones are that I have.
Yeah, I know. I don't really watch any of it. I dropped Paramount Plus, actually. I had dropped that one. I once had Discovery Plus as well, and I dropped it. The bottom line is I don't watch TV.
I just don't, That's the other big thing is like TV in itself is a declining industry as we know it or as we knew it. The over-the-air type TV is just not.
Yeah. Honestly, the shows that I've watched on Hulu here recently were like the wrestling biographies, like the Dark Side of the Ring. I've watched that on Vice.
Right, Vice.
Because those are interesting because, I mean, they're the stories like just like it says, the dark side of the ring. Like these characters that their life had some pretty dark aspects to it, right? Or their story is a sad story, so to speak.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Things like that.
Fascinating, though.
Yeah. I mean, but I found them interesting. I was watching Blacklist, but it's now ended. It was somewhat disappointing, by the way it ended. And when you were talking about Max, I actually went back and watched The Big Bang Theory like all the way through because I didn't see how it ended. It actually ended pretty good.
It was a good show from start to finish.
So what I was going to say about Disney Plus to finish that off is the other issue they apparently have, and they're talking about cracking down on is password sharing.
I was going to mention that. Same thing Netflix had done recently.
Right, which is a genuine issue. I don't know that you're ever going to completely solve it, but you can
make money off of it.
Yeah, I mean, you can when they say crack down, you can make it, harder to share.
Or it's basically, hey, you're watching, Disney Plus from 3 different locations at the same time, so clearly you're sharing your password because you're not in 3 different places geographically at the same time.
I've noticed that YouTube doesn't seem to care too much about that. I guess because they make money.
Yeah, they're making tons of money on ads.
Because a lot of theirs is ad-based. Well, I even have a subscription. It's still pretty low.
They're going up, by the way. I saw that.
They're going up, yeah.
Because I watch more YouTube than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember I did that a long time ago because I got tired of watching the ads. In my case, though, I mean, what the parts that's included is YouTube Music, so it's like having your music service included with it, so it's still a good deal.
Right. I never really use YouTube Music, but it's worth it to not have to watch ads because that's primarily what I watch. I usually watch shows on YouTube, like made for YouTube shows, I should say.
Right.
And I barely watch TV as it was. Yeah, the password sharing thing, they're going to make some money off of that, but don't you think they'd probably lose some more subscribers off of that? Although I guess Netflix hasn't. So
possibly.
Maybe they think.
Yeah, it's possible. It depends on how badly people want it. People want to see certain things on Netflix right now. I don't know that Disney Plus has that at the moment. I can't think of any one like show that people just have to see.
Gosh.
They've had that with The Mandalorian, but The Mandalorian just has so few episodes per season. It's like it's on so little. I mean, if they could find a way to get it on more often, it would be.
Ahsoka's coming up. That might be.
Then again, it might decline the quality if they increase the number of episodes.
Season 3 was kind of a letdown. 2 was pretty good.
Everything's going to eventually have its point.
I think it's already peaked. I'm never going to cancel Disney Plus. Like, I'm always going to have it because the kids, the kids get older, but they love that. They watch Big City Greens. There's this new show, I forgot.
Oh, yeah. I love Big City Greens.
Yeah, Big City Greens is great.
It's hilarious.
They watch all kinds of stuff on Disney Plus, so it's worth it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's almost like, I just kind of like knowing that it's there.
Yeah, right. I want to,
Because I can just, like, if I decide I want to watch something old
right?
at some point in time, I can
The
just
classics that we grew up on.
use the remote that I
Yeah.
have right beside me. Instead of having to do something like go up and get a DVD.
Right. Who wants to do that?
I mean, seriously.
Gosh, I don't even think. Right.
Blu-ray,
I haven't
excuse me.
used my Blu-ray player in like 2 years at least, maybe longer. I've barely even
It's
touched
been a
it.
while.
So
Yeah.
that's why they're striking right now, though. And Iger commented about that he's dedicated to resolving it, blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. But, I mean, it is a new frontier right now. We're trying to figure out how everyone's going to make money off of streaming because that's where everything's going, whether we want to or not. That's where it's headed.
Yeah. That's what people want, but they also don't want to pay a fortune in order
Right.
to do it.
Yeah.
So essentially, you know what's essentially going to happen is it's all going to be on one service again, and it's going to be similar to cable,
Yeah.
but streaming. That's pretty much, which it kind of already is that.
If you could build your own cable bundle, like they never did this because the money was always the problem. But if you could just pick like, oh, I
Yeah.
want these channels instead of like,
Well, if they did that, they would have probably lost money because,
yes, that's the thing, because they have to pay all these,
right.
you know,
So say the people that don't like sports, for instance, if you exclude the sports, it would be
Right.
dirt cheap.
and yeah, and then they would be losing money
You know
on
what
their
I mean?
subscription versus they need to keep it where they're always making money. But that's why
Yeah.
cable though is dying because nobody wants to pay that much for.
Well, I mean, well, right. And really cable is not cable
Yeah,
anymore either.
they're
I
all
mean, like,
streaming at this point.
they're all some sort of streaming option. Yeah, satellite is the one that was awful. I mean, they charge you all that money, and like that you have like all these channels that
Yes,
you never
have
watch.
like hundreds upon hundreds of channels that you never.
At least with the streaming things like Hulu and YouTube TV, it's more selective. At least it is thus far. They probably keep adding channels.
TV used to be, must-see TV, whatever you'd watch on a Thursday night or whatever, and at a certain time, but now nobody wants to do that anymore. I don't want to tune in. If I miss it, I miss it, I want to see it whenever I want to see it.
Right. Part of what I like about this era is that I don't have to be tied to a specific time that something's on. Like, even if after it's done, I can
Right.
still watch it on demand.
But that
pretty much.
definitely has an impact on ad revenue because I can skip all the ads too if I record it and I don't have to watch any commercials.
Well, the thing is, the way Hulu works, though, is if you're going back and just watching it on demand, especially,
Yeah, they
Well,
force you to watch.
yeah, you have to watch
Yeah.
so many ads. But which they're not that bad. They're shorter than the commercial times used to be in a lot of.
Commercial breaks. Ugh, that was the worst thing. But now that we have
Yeah.
this, micro level of attention span, you can't do, like, nobody wants to watch TV and watch 5 minutes of commercials anymore. The Super Bowl is the only thing where
Right.
people will watch commercials. That's it. So, I don't know.
Think about it. Whenever you like on YouTube, even if they have videos of say
Yeah.
podcasts, what do they also have on their channel most of the time? They usually have broken up clips of certain subjects on the show that actually probably get more views than the long show itself, especially if you have like a 4-hour
Yeah.
show. I mean, people really only want to hit the highlights or hear the parts that they want to hear. There's no way they want to hear the entire 4 hours.
Yeah.
Trying to keep it condensed as much as possible. And even us, I mean, it's easy for us to talk on for about a subject for longer than originally
Right.
intended. So,
Yeah. There is
Kinda like
audience
this.
for that, though, for that kind of content. I think that's another thing. Interviews, YouTube or podcasts.
have become a big thing, right?
Yeah, that too, right? Everything is either short or long because if you're wanting to hear an interview with someone, you don't want to hear a 5-minute interview on a late night talk show. You want to really hear.
Yeah, it depends on the
Right. If it's someone I'm really
Yeah.
interested in hearing what they have to say, I don't want a 5-minute interview. I want an hour and a half, like hearing all these things,
Yeah.
And we will be right back.
Teaching her how to drive. But Dad, why not use Greenlight to help her save for her own car? Mowing lawns and getting paid. She'll go from washing your car to flexing with her own. How? With Greenlight, the money app for families. Together, you can navigate the world of earning, saving, and investing. Because when you teach her to be smart about money, she'll go far. Invest in your best investment. Sign up today at greenlight.com.
This episode is also sponsored by Zencastr. We use Zencastr for traveling with a mouse, and we really enjoy how easy and user-friendly it is. You can record up to 4K video and high-quality audio, and they have backups, so you never have to worry about losing any of your audio. Go to Zencastr.com and use the promo code TWTM and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr Pay plan. I want you to have the same easy experience we do for all our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story with Zencastr.
And now, back to the show.
So why don't we move on to a subject we discussed? I mean, we've done some things in the past that have been like, if you were CEO, what would you change type deal.
Yeah.
This is kind of really, like, how would we say this? It's like you take each park and see what would you focus on improvement-wise, maybe?
Yeah. Or maybe what would be the next thing that should be done
The next thing?
to this park?
Yeah.
I could come up with
Yes.
stuff for every park, really.
All right, well, let's just jump into it then. All right, since you say you can come up with stuff with every park, where should we begin? Should we begin with the one that needs the most love?
Yeah, the easiest one to...
And I'm not talking about what
Think
kind
about.
of shape they're currently in, because that would obviously be Epcot. I'm talking about the one that hasn't had much change lately. Being Animal Kingdom. Yes, has not had change.
Yeah. I think we talked about this with Raul. I remember talking about the different parks and, yeah, Animal Kingdom.
Well, there's an obvious area that's,
Yeah,
you know,
Dino Land.
yeah, that's definitely,
Yeah.
it seems like it's been given up on altogether.
I guess the question is, do you get rid of Dinosaur and retheme it completely?
I kind of hate the idea of doing that. I really do. I
feel like you have to.
I like the idea of having a prehistoric area, but it should have been more immersively themed surrounding that attraction.
Yeah. So in your scenario, do you keep the Boneyard and Dinosaur and then the Dinorama area, whatever you call it, Hester and Chester's, whatever?
Yeah, I'm torn because Dinosaur I really liked back in the day. Like, it was one of the attractions I was most looking forward to when I went to Animal Kingdom the first time.
Yeah. It was really...
It was called Countdown to Extinction then.
Mhm.
And it actually had stuff that worked.
Yeah. It was the thrill attraction to start with.
Yeah, it was.
Till Everest.
It was until Everest. And then, yeah, it's taken a long time for them to get other things involved.
Yeah.
The reason why I say I'm torn with that one, though, is because, like I say, I like the original, but at the same time, it's like a mirror of Indiana Jones, but with
Right.
dinosaurs. Like, they just rethemed, so to speak.
And not quite as good
Right.
anymore.
Right.
That's for sure.
So, but on top of that, it feels like with that one, they almost tried to get a similar attraction, we'll say, to what Universal was about to release with Islands of Adventure, because Islands of Adventure opened in 99, right? And the Jurassic Park River Adventure. And it just so happens that they have a dinosaur at the end of their ride that comes out.
It
Drop
does the
underneath.
exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a coincidence there? Seems like the Universal
Probably.
rivalry type thing has gone on for a long time, really. So
It really has. I mean, okay. For me, I say get rid of the entire area. I think just start over. That's what I would do. Because that's an entire land you could rebuild as something else. Instead of having Dino and then Moana, whatever. Like, what would you call it? If they do what they had proposed back at D23, this Moana area.
I don't like doing what they proposed back at D23 only because it does It looked like it was combining different IP, which to me sounds like they're just trying to do what they did in Hollywood Studios all over again. So I would say pick one if you're going to change it and focus on that. What would the best option be? Which one best fits the animal kingdom scene?
Zootopia, perhaps?
Zootopia is an option.
Maybe they're waiting to see Hong Kong's getting Zootopia?
So I think you have to do either something that involves animals or environment. So Moana kind of does the environment part. Only thing is it has ocean, so that doesn't really fit over there unless they totally retheme that.
Right.
I say something Zootopia related is probably going to be the best bet. Maybe make Zootopia over there.
It could work. I mean, you could build some kind of ride with the existing ride vehicle where you're like Nick and Judy, you're helping them out, like track down.
But the only thing is, if you use all the existing system, it makes it kind of thrill. And what about that is thrill? What about Zootopia? It could be thrill.
Well, you could tone down the thrill a little bit for younger audiences. But I mean, what is there a height limit on dinosaur?
There's it's 40.
What is it?
40, I think.
40. Yeah, you could like tone that down to a 38 or something like that to include more kids.
If you use the existing ride vehicle, you're probably getting, because a lot of the height requirements have to do more with the ride vehicle.
Well, doesn't the ride vehicle, you can customize how it moves and such, so you don't have to make it as intense.
Perhaps. It's still, I really don't know what goes into that, how they figure that, because it still baffles me how Runaway Railway has no height limit, yet Rise does, and the only difference is that one little drop. Unless they do the height limit involving the intensity, like the realistic parts of it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe
maybe they think kids that are under that height range are also in an age range that might be more scared of everything that goes on. I don't know.
Possibly. I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question.
It makes no sense to me.
Might be other reasons why.
Yeah, but it's the exact same thing, is it not?
I mean, basically, yeah, it's a trackless ride. It's like Ratatouille.
The vehicles are almost
just with a drop.
But the difference is with Runaway and Rise, the vehicles are almost the same type vehicle as far as the seating.
They're almost identical. Yeah.
Anyway,
but that's a good example of how you could turn Dinosaur into a less intense ride make it a Ratatouille adventure kind of ride. Anyway,
but yeah, Dinosaur is the main area. Is there any other area that needs particular focus? I mean, it's kind of hard to add or take away something there and it still have the consistent theming, which is important to me. I don't know about everyone.
I would love to see more done to Pandora, like add a new attraction or something there, add a third attraction, but
maybe something involving the new movie.
Right. Or movies, whenever they come out. I don't know what you would do. But obviously I would update Flight of Passage, which I think they will eventually, because that's not a hard update. Just reprogram and add a new film and things like that. Update the film. But
have you seen The Way of Water yet, by the way?
I have not, actually. It's on Disney Plus.
Yes,
right?
it is.
I have not watched. Have you?
Yes.
I don't have like 14 hours to spare yet.
I actually have. I watched it. Actually, I started watching it before we went on our trip, and I watched the rest of it while I was stacking lightning lanes. But
yeah,
in a lot of ways, I actually enjoyed it better than the original. Me.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm sure it's good. I mean, I just don't have 3.5 hours to spare to watch it.
Yeah, I got you. Well, you can break it up like I did,
I guess.
If they added maybe an element of Way of Water, I don't know if they update the film, because I don't like the idea of changing it, to be honest with you. Because I think it already incorporates a lot of everything that's good.
Well, it could be like Soarin'. You could have times where you revert back to the original.
Yeah.
Like the one in California does anyway.
What was the comment people had made? They said Flight of Passage is the shortest James Cameron film ever, or something like that. Yeah.
Probably.
Could they potentially fit another attraction over there? I don't know if they have the space, really, unless they expand.
I think they could add space. I think there's some backstage area you could clear out and add a show building or something.
Start taking away from the safari. Well, actually, the safari's not in that area. Yeah.
There's room. There's room behind Satuli, perhaps, or there's room there's like a parking lot on the other side of Pandora, like on the other side, like behind those bathrooms that are near.
Oh, wait, tell me about the bathrooms. Are they good?
Yes. Those are okay. But, the bathrooms outside of Navi, before you get into the queue for Navi, you could expand back there. There's basically a cast parking lot back there. Just relocate that.
Well, anyway. And with Animal Kingdom, an area that I haven't visited in quite a long time, actually, or attraction I haven't done in quite a long time, even though I think the theming and the idea of getting there is good, is Tough to Be a Bug. Yeah. I really like the whole build up to it.
Right, but that whole area is like, nobody ever goes into that area. It's almost wasted space.
Well, I mean,
where the Tree of Life is.
I just think it's cool that, like, you go down the queue and it's like you're slowly but surely, it's like you're shrinking down to
going
the size.
Underground.
Yeah. It's like
it's a cool effect.
Yeah. It's like you're shrinking to the size of a bug while you're walking through the queue, slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're just slowly going underground.
Right. And then you go into the tree and you're like, we're into the tree. This is cool. Oh, I mean, that's the way I always thought about it. So,
yeah. It's actually cool, but that area is kind of wasted space now. You can see the whole area around the tree.
The theater probably could have afforded to be a little bigger than what they did too.
Although now they don't need it.
I mean, because the reason I say this, because I was once in the very front row, and you're like neck craned upward and cross-eyed if you sit in that row.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
You have to cross your eyes to focus on it. That's how close it is. I mean, that was kind of a mistake to put a seat that close to the screen.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Indeed.
So I guess we've established that what we need to do is take care of Dinoland.
Dinoland, and perhaps give some love to Pandora.
Yeah. Moving along, I guess, so what should we go with next? Which other park needs the most love the next? Probably Magic Kingdom or
Hollywood Studios needs something.
Hollywood Studios needs an identity, but where do you begin?
Well, I think for one, there's just like corners that you have to go to. There's no like connectivity. There's no hub and spoke design like the other parks have, which even Epcot to some degree has a hub and spoke design until you get to World Showcase, and then it's like, a giant lagoon. But there needs to be more connectivity, I think. I guess that's my thought. So what I would do at Hollywood Studios is that animation courtyard area is the most completely useless space that they have. Is I would connect Toy Story Land to it, and then connect that to Sunset Boulevard somehow to kind of give it a connectivity to where you can get places without having to double back all the time. I think that's my biggest annoyance about Hollywood Studios. Well, one of them about the layout anyway is you have to go all the way behind Chinese Theater to get to Toy Story Land or Galaxy's Edge if you're going that way. But then, I want to go back and do Runaway Railway, so I have to double back the way I came and go this crazy tight pathway to get up to where Runaway Railway is or anywhere else. It just doesn't make sense having to double back all the time. So there's a lot of dead ends, I should put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I would try to get rid of some of those dead ends.
What would I focus on as far as Hollywood Studios? I guess I have to do a couple of things here. I would fix Galaxy's Edge so that at least when you look at it from a distance or any other angle or whatever, can't see the nakedness.
Right. Or just
spires.
These, like,
I would make it
poles with a rock on top of it.
Right. I would improve the aesthetic of the back of Galaxy's Edge.
Sure.
I would find some way to increase a little more shade Toy Story Land and make it fit somehow. I mean, you could put like some sort of a giant play toy or something, at least like cast a shadow occasionally, kind of like some buildings do in other areas.
You can't have giant trees, obviously.
I mean, I get it's supposed to be his backyard, but can't then his backyard be something like, I don't know, a swing set maybe, or I don't know.
I don't know. You'd have to build something really massive to scale.
Yeah, true.
So,
I'm just thinking something. I haven't really come up with a what per se. That's back there.
Right. It needs some shade. I don't know.
Something.
They need to do some animation courtyard, though. If I connected to Toy Story Land, you could make that area into a Pixar area to where it flows from Toy Story into other properties. That's what they would do. So
I don't know.
And then you've got show buildings that are basically unused. You got the theater for Mermaid you could do something with. You've got the big building that the Disney Junior thing's in. You could do something with that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got whatever the launch bay stuff is that you could demolish or reuse for some other attraction. You've got room for at least 3 different attractions in that one area.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally wasted space right now.
Yeah. See, now the way they've kind of designed this whole thing, Sunset Boulevard almost doesn't fit with the rest of the park.
That too.
Even though I love Sunset Boulevard, as far like they've done, it doesn't. I mean, but I guess it doesn't.
Theming's
It really
right.
doesn't matter that it doesn't fit because nothing fits theming wise.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It's kind of, but in a way, it fits by not fitting. So,
Right. Talk about a dead end, though. I mean, it's another dead end.
Well, you got to have them at some point. I mean,
But if you connected that area to the animation courtyard, and then you connect animation courtyard to Toy Story Land, then you connect Toy Story Land to Galaxy's Edge, at least everything, you can walk one giant path around the whole thing.
Yeah. I think another thing I
Anyway.
would focus on is a name change for the park.
Really?
Yes, because it doesn't really
Didn't
that
they-
doesn't fit still. I mean, I know they played around with it, but they took this MGM out. So all they did was they got Disney. They did a voting, I think, on it one time. Supposedly, they
Right.
looked for input, but I think it needs to have something different than Hollywood Studios because they need to drop the studios out of it somewhere. I mean, having
guess.
Hollywood in it, I guess, is kind of, but it doesn't even really it doesn't embody like all of Hollywood by any means anymore. I mean, it's all Disney related property.
I think it could be like Disney's Hollywood Adventure or Disney's movie adventure, Disney Movies Adventure. I don't know. Well, something like that.
As we've stated before, over half the park is now 2 properties, Toy Story and
Right.
Star Wars. As a matter of fact,
Yep.
Lucasfilm has a huge presence
Yeah.
in this park.
Like half the park
Yeah.
footprint is Lucasfilm.
There you go. I don't really think Hollywood Studios kind of fits anymore.
What would you do with the Indiana Jones stunt show? Because that's the only thing left that they continue to pretend like they're a studio with the stunt show. I mean, it hasn't changed. So
Right.
would you keep it as a stunt show and drop the whole we're doing a production thing, or what?
That's a good question.
It's still a good show, but there's a lot of space there. If you wanted to build an attraction, you could get rid of the show and build some kind of attraction there. But
I think I would kind of like to see that updated to at least like update the stunts or something, not just. Well, I've said that before about not having it all Raiders, but really the other movies, the type of stunts is kind of hard to do live, I think. So,
yeah, you can't do a tank chase off a cliff.
yeah, it'll be hard to
Or-
recreate.
Yeah, some of the other.
Well, I mean, think of it. Temple is kind of hard to you can't do a mine car chase. You can't do,
Yeah,
what was, like,
You
you
can't-
can't, it's hard, it'd be kind of hard to recreate the opening scene that had stunts in it too, right? So,
right. You could have a volunteer from the audience and then rip their heart out every. That'd be fun to watch. Oh, guess you can't do that.
or could you couldn't do a stunt whenever somebody drinks the wrong grill.
And they just turn into a skeleton. Invite a guest to come in and drink from the. We poisoned all of these except for the correct ones, so hopefully
No.
sign this waiver first and then. Anyway,
I gotta be honest, I don't know what I would do there unless I would consider
yeah,
I would consider, and this is what some people have said in the past, I would consider scrapping the stunt show altogether and making it Indiana Jones themed attraction there to keep Indy.
right.
So,
I like the idea of keeping Indy somehow in there, but
because having an Indiana Jones themed attraction we do not currently have in Florida, not a ride.
Right. not a ride at all. Yeah,
So, and I think it's like the only park, well, not the only park, he's only got 2 other rides. I would say they could have focused on the new movie, but I don't know if they want to do that now. I think their best bet would be to I think their best bet would be to focus on a ride surrounding either a totally new adventure or a classic adventure.
Yeah.
Anyway, to be honest, the Chinese theater doesn't make sense with Runaway, but what can you do?
Yes, right. As we talked about last week, it doesn't really make sense, but for what Hollywood Studios was, and it didn't make sense to tear down the Chinese theater.
No, it doesn't.
Rebuild
It doesn't.
So you got to keep it.
And
so
really,
it is what it
I
is.
always go back and forth on Rocket. I was like, does it need to change? What would it be? I mean, I've just never come up with something good that if they decide to. So I say,
Yeah, so with my idea, if you link Toy Story Land to the courtyard, animation courtyard, and then you extend that on to where Rock and Roller Coaster is, you make it the East Coast Incredicoaster.
yeah, but
That's an easy retheme.
I guess there's a lot of neat things you could do in the dark in there with the Incredibles compared,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You could retheme it. That'd be the easiest retheme, is just make it Incredicoaster.
All right, so let's move along because we need to finish. We
Yeah,
need to wrap this
Epcot.
up. Let's go to Epcot. Even though we don't technically know what it's going to look like when it's all said and done, or it's
Yeah.
all finished now, but
So my focus would be World Showcase and adding more attractions into World Showcase, because Future World, until we see what comes of it, it's still going to be a hot mess. I would definitely redo Figment and try to revitalize that one. The Seas, I would probably try to do something better with that too, but it's probably okay. But yeah, World Showcase, I would try to add like attractions to more of the pavilions. So Germany, for example, would be a good place to start. Add Pinocchio there or something. To me, that would make sense. So that you have, it's not just France and Norway and Mexico, like to complete opposite ends. Like you have some stuff all the way around that, the kids can do as they go. So that's what I would want to do.
I think adding attractions to countries, they could afford to have one or two more. I would probably revisit or dig up the Mount Fuji.
Gosh, where would you put it though? Do you have enough room back there?
Supposedly they do because they had it in the original plans.
I guess so.
The only thing there is how does it start differing from Everest or Matterhorn or something like that. So that's the big question there.
I feel like they probably took some of that plan and when they were doing Everest, and they sort of took some of the cues from that. I mean, there's a spot. I mean, there's like an empty lot next to Japan, between Japan and Morocco, that they could put something. I don't know if it's big enough for a coaster like that, though.
I would use an original idea, which that's not what Disney does. So,
right. So there's like the only thing would be Big Hero 6, right? You could try to make some kind of Big
like
Hero
I said,
6
I
type.
wouldn't do it that way. So this is what I would do. So,
but San Francisco is like a mashup between San Francisco and Tokyo, so it's not exactly Japan, right? So would you put it there? I don't know. This is supposed to be authentic Japan, not a made-up version of a hybrid between.
if it's something to be authentic Japan, you could even come up with an attraction that takes you into, I don't know, like an era in which they were having great battles or what have you, samurai type.
How about to make it easy, how about they just do a clone of like Journey to the Center of the Earth or something that's unique to Tokyo Disney that they would bring here?
Yeah. Well, I guess you could say that.
Trying to think of what else is original out there that they don't have here.
You know, since we're in Epcot, something I was pondering here just recently when I talked about when the IP, like the last original attraction being Everest, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the first IP added to Epcot that you recall? It's one of your favorite attractions. I said that sarcastically, by the way.
Oh, the seas. Duh.
Yeah.
What was I thinking?
So
Yeah, the seas.
that, coincidentally, opened as the Seas with Nemo in 2007.
Oh, really?
After
Wow. So literally
Bob Iger became CEO. He was also responsible for the first touch of intellectual property in Epcot.
That makes sense, yeah.
And one, quite honestly, I do not think was necessarily for the better, even though I don't just hate the attraction. I just happen to like the original music, especially. Not to say that they couldn't have done away or made some changes to the original attraction and it had been fine, but I would have liked to have kept the same basic concept. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I would actually, I mean, when we say what would you do in Epcot other than how I started to say outside of take it back to pre-1994.
Right. Bring Horizons back somehow.
I mean, Horizons 2.0 would actually be a good option because a lot of that stuff that they were talking about in there has not come to fruition. So it's still the future.
Some of it has. We can do video calls now.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite the same thing they were doing, though. Do we do hologram calls?
I mean, I bet we could. In the metaverse, you could.
Yeah.
Anyway, that would be cool, though.
I would find a way to revisit some of the old ideas, I think. That's just me.
What about, like, the Play Pavilion or Wonders of Life? What would you do with that building?
With the Wonders of Life building?
Yeah. I would do something with it. I wouldn't just leave it sitting there.
Well, I mean, as we had talked about and what they had talked about doing, what would make sense to me would be to theme it to something to do with Inside Out. Would make a lot of sense, I thought, if you're going to do IP.
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of like the idea of just revamping it and have it still be about, the human body and that sort of thing, because it kind of fits with the futuristic, like what health's going to be in the future, so to speak, was kind of the original idea, right. I think, was to make it a health pavilion.
I still like the Play Pavilion. I think they had some good ideas for it, potentially. I don't know what they actually had
But again, Epcot's, it's already changed from, and don't get me wrong, Guardians is a great attraction, but if you're thinking theming-wise, it kind of fits into it because it's somewhat futuristic, but it doesn't fit in with the original Epcot idea. It was supposed to be all about the future, and like this is focusing on what energy stuff's going to be like. This is focusing on future living. This one's talking about our transportation modes. This one's tapping into our imagination. This one's about the agriculture. All that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was kind of divided. Yeah. It was well divided about the future. Right. So
now it's a hot mess too, but it is what it is.
Spaceship Earth, I guess, was about the history of communications. It still is.
Yes.
The only one that still has its original theme, I guess.
I would just revamp Spaceship Earth to be like an indoor coaster inside there. Basically Space Mountain.
So,
anyway.
All right, let's move along to, I guess, the end. Magic Kingdom, right? So
the Magic Kingdom.
The magic of the Magic Kingdom.
So Tron, obviously, is open, but I think you got to do Beyond Big Thunder, as they called it.
Maybe.
I think I would like to see it expanded back there to Villain's Land or whatever else they had planned. I think it's fine. But that's where I would expand Magic Kingdom.
I think it's time for another overhaul of the areas of Tomorrowland. Obviously, Tron's new, but the areas of Tomorrowland that have not yet been touched. I think if it's supposed to be about the future, then it needs to get touched up again, like it did. They touched it up in 94 and redid some things, and then they kind of redone it again. I forgot how long ago it was, and they made it look more of the classic feel to it, which is kind of nice in some ways. Yeah. But I think they need to, again, Tomorrowland. Here's the type of attractions that originally had in it: Flight to the Moon or Mission to Mars, whichever one you wanted to have at the time, right?
Yeah.
And you had, they had the circle vision over there, but eventually it became Timekeeper, so it became about time travel. Obviously a futuristic idea, right?
Yeah.
And then you had an attraction that was about flying, essentially, in either dream flight or if you had wings. Now, I agree that could have been some things in there that had, room for improvement. But, that's still, like, the theme was all cohesive is what I'm trying to say, right?
Right.
And then what you end up with is you have Stitch's Great Escape, which Ivy, and it also has been now bombed. You have Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor, which, people have enjoyed, right? Buzz Lightyear, which is essentially another IP, even though it's a fun game, essentially, right? I'm just saying they got away from the original idea when it was all said and done.
Yeah, totally.
So,
that's a good point.
In a way, Astro Orbiter it's funny because it was one of the ones that changed from Starjets, one of the ones that they changed from the old look. It's kind of like the only thing that still looks like the 94 revamp now, right? It's like the only thing.
That's a good point.
So, I don't know.
Carousel of Progress, I guess.
Yeah, Carousel of Progress, it was the best place to put it because it talks about, it's supposed to change, even though it's still kind of, it was supposed to be updating the future. I think you just about have to keep it, relevant,
Yeah. I know it's like, this was Walt's thing and you don't want to, people would be picketing if they changed the original first 3 scenes, but I almost feel like you have to now.
Yeah, I think what you got to do is because so much time has passed, you have to kind of, I guess, make the gaps longer. Like,
right.
Like you can still start at the beginning, but you need to make more time have passed between the next scene, right?
Like 40-year gaps instead of 20-year gaps.
Something like that.
Or something.
There needs to be just longer time periods in between, longer gaps in between the scenes. Still have 4 scenes.
So, like keep the first scene cut the same, basically, and then you skip from there to like the 40s.
Right.
And then you skip from there to the, or maybe even skip 50 years.
Well, we need to skip that far.
But I'm just saying, I don't know.
However many years.
Skip to the 40s and then the 80s.
However many years we have removed, just divide that by 4.
But can you imagine, like, that third scene being, like, the 80s? Like, for all of us who grew up kind of in that time frame, the ones who are bringing our kids now, that would be, like, totally be nostalgic about it.
Tell me about it. That would be an awesome scene, right?
Right. The original Carousel of Progress, the folks that grew up in the early 1900s or the 1920s, I was like, oh, see how that was? That was cool, I remember when I first got a ice box.
Okay. For starters, there's literally no one still here that grew up in the early 1900s. So.
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
The original ride in the 60s, they were like, oh, I remember those days. But now there's nobody that remembers those days. So we need to, like, have something that the newer generations can look back on and would want to be like, oh, I want to ride Carousel of Progress because there's a cool scene from the 80s in there.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
They could definitely increase its popularity by doing something like that.
I think they would. So leave the first scene alone, but change the rest of them, update them, and then do one that's kind of futuristic.
Yeah. I think I would find a way, I don't know how feasible this is, I think I would find a way to overhaul Pirates to be more like the Disneyland one.
That would be nice. Yeah, I don't know how you would make it bigger. You really need to make it longer.
Though. The queue is better in Florida, I think. The queuing better overall in Florida.
But you got to make a bigger show building somehow.
Well, I mean, you're only adding a handful of scenes, so you don't really have I just don't.
You could theme. What you could do is the unload area, move that, like, where do you actually go up the hill like you do at Disneyland, and then unload, like, in the same area that you load.
Yeah, and
I guess. Kind of like Small World does.
Disneyland, there's 2 drops, right? So
Yeah. There's not really room for another drop in Florida, but you could at least have an extra scene going up the hill or the current unload area.
right.
You could add a scene there and then just go up the hill and then exit up there somehow.
Although the ending in California, it didn't come off quite the way Walt intended, I don't think. Yeah. He says that you're talking about you finish it.
Go back up the water?
Yeah. But I don't think it feels like you're going up a waterfall.
No, you're just going up a big lift hill and then you're like,
Yeah. You don't.
okay, this is a very long exit.
Yeah. It did end up feeling like you're going up a waterfall. So.
Yeah, there was no climactic ending.
Well, I mean,
the last like 3 minutes of the ride are just going up a hill,
right,
and then going around and seeing a bird, and that's
the
it.
climactic ending actually happens prior to going up the waterfall, technically.
Right, exactly.
Which, what's supposed to be happening there, which doesn't come off in the actual attraction, is, from that video from the, what was it? It wasn't Wonderful World, it was the other one, I think. Anyway, they went through the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction that I'm talking about, and then at the end they actually are, they have these voices talking, and then it's supposed to be that there's an explosion, right there, that you just barely escape. It doesn't come off quite that way when you're riding it, but if you're watching that video, you can kind of see that's what they're going for.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that I would think I would attempt to. It's not a huge deal, but I think the facade, I love the way the mansion looks for Haunted Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just for looking at, right? I think it would have been better if they'd have tried to find a way to make it look like you were actually going in the thing.
Like Disneyland's, where you kind of go in the front door almost.
Yeah. You don't like go into the side of the hillside of the mansion.
Basically go under it.
Yeah. It would have been much more effective if they could figure out a way to make it like you were walking in. I don't know. I don't understand what the reasoning was for doing it the way they did it.
Because they didn't want to do an actual stretching room like the elevator type.
Well, I guess, but what it ends up being is as like, okay, it's just like the landmark for the attraction is what the mansion ends up being.
Yeah.
So
that's all it is.
So, and they make it like you're walking up to a door, but you can obviously tell the door is not the front door. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
You're kind of going underneath the building. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that would be an improvement. We're going to improving on things. You could probably do something with Tom Sawyer's Island.
That's one thing I've thought of, but I don't know what you would do. If you expand the new lands behind it, you could definitely utilize it more.
They're leaning toward almost getting rid of Frontierland. That's what they're kind of working towards, it seems like. I say that because, you have Tiana's Bayou Adventure right there. It doesn't really fit in Frontierland, so to speak.
Right. It's more, you'd have to have a New Orleans square.
Yep, almost. And then it kind of divides up Frontierland, so, what do you do? I think that's what they were talking about with the Beyond Big Thunder. I think Big Thunder is going to be like the gateway to a whole new land. And
right, which would be like new Frontierland.
Yeah.
And it starts with Big Thunder and the railroad station, and then you go, which is technically east. You're actually heading east to go west.
This project seems like further and further away, though, just because of state of things.
Which is why we need Apple to buy them.
If we ever want to see this done.
I guess so. Any of the things we talked about would require an Apple acquisition.
See, and I get that you're talking about maybe potentially a Villains Land, but I actually think a Villains Park would be better. I think it would be better served to have a whole park revolved around villains.
Well, they don't build parks anymore, apparently. They just build land, so Villains Land is all we can hope for.
They supposedly have enough land to work with there, though, to build another park if they wanted to.
Fifth Gate. They totally could, yeah.
Now, the question is, do they want to? They probably would really be better served if they started looking elsewhere and invest in other parts of the country. But
possibly, especially with the current climate in Florida. Not, politically and geographically, I guess, climate. But
well, I mean, I'm just saying that it wouldn't hurt them to expand.
Yeah.
If there's enough land somewhere, which is not likely nowadays, truthfully.
Yeah. There's a lot of land near the Wild World of Sports that is really connected, and it would make sense to put a fifth gate there, actually.
At the entrance, though?
Yeah, it'd be
the first thing you see.
Yeah. But it makes sense. If you look at it, there's tons of land around Wide World of Sports that could be used, and it's connected to World Drive-In, Osceola, so there's easy access to it.
Yeah. I think it would be kind of cool, and it would actually make a lot of sense transportation-wise if they could find a way to connect.
Skyliner.
Well, if they could find a way to put a park in between, like Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, and Epcot are all somewhat closer together, way more so than Magic Kingdom. Find a way to put a park in between all that. You know what I mean? Somewhere along the way.
Well,
be ideal.
Also, Walt was the whole thing was going to be connected via high-speed rapid transit.
But it was also going to be
monorail.
A fully functioning city.
Right. Running the full length of the property.
So anyway, that's just a couple of things to throw out there. We kind of went overboard with the idea, but
yes, Tim Cook, if you're listening,
right?
Say. Anyway,
he'd probably just find a way to put that logo on as many things as possible.
Yes.
The forbidden apple.
Yeah,
the forbidden fruit. Anyway,
indeed.
If you would like to find more content still, though, you can do so by going to Facebook. Should I call it X now? And
yes.
Instagram.
Facebook X.
Yeah, we call it Facebook, X, and Instagram. The YouTube channel we also have, which has a few videos more recently. I haven't done something in a couple of months now, but stay tuned. There should be more content to come. Where's another place you can find this, Adam?
Our website, travelingwiththemouse.com. You can email us podcast at travelingwiththemouse.com. And if you'd like assistance booking a Disney trip, we have a travel agent friend. Her info is also on our website, travelingwiththemouse.com.
So for Adam, this is John, and this has been a mega Traveling with the Mouse. And we hope that you will join us on our next trip.
To the moon or Mars.
To the moon.